Well, hey, everybody, welcome to Ultimate Insider, Bear Insiders Podcast. I'm Mike Pawlawski, your host. And today we have the whole crew here with us. We've got Greg Richardson, we got Jim McGill, the whole Bear Insider staff working on a preseason preview for 2025. And there are so many new names. It's going to take everything we got to get it all to you here today. So, gentlemen, first off, I'm going to leave it open there. Welcome on to the podcast.
Thanks, Mike. Great to be here.
Thanks, Mike. Always great to visit with you.
Yeah, always good. We're going to start today. I mean, it's just so many new faces at Cal right now. Guys who we've known a little bit from spring that we've seen come in, and then guys who have transferred in for fall camp. And so there's so many new faces. Let's start on the defensive side of the ball. You guys know me. I love to start with the line because that's where the game is centered around. If you have a great defensive line, a great offensive line, it changes everything for you. And I think this year is the first year in the last, well, for as long as I can remember, that we come into the season with a defensive line where I'm like, hey, we're pretty solid up front. We got a couple of good starters in that defensive front. We got Aiden Keanaina, Notre Dame transfer, played last year, showed up well. TJ Bowlers, I think, is going to be pretty good. And then we've got some new faces, so we have some depth at that defensive line. I'll start. Whoever wants to take the floor, go ahead and take it. But let's start up front on defense on that defensive line.
Yeah, I'll go first. Look, I think it's always good to start with who's not coming back. Ricky Correa was a real stalwart for the Bears, 340 pounds, hard guy to move. And then in the spring, Nate Burrell, who was looked poised for a great season, went down with what the staff has said is a season-ending injury. So disappointing to not have those two guys. But if you look at the young guys who are coming up, you look at who came back and how they did in the portal, it's hard not to feel good about this. I'll call out a couple of guys that, especially in fall camp, I thought have really popped. One is Zay Smith, transferred in from the FCS level. He is not the tallest guy you've ever seen, but yes, maybe the widest arms as relative to his height of anybody I've ever seen. And he's built like a fire hydrant, and he's got a first step like a point guard. And so he's been a consistent disruptor, and he's going to be part of that D line, especially on passing downs. I think people are going to really like what they see.
He has
at that one position, right inside, those big long arms make a huge difference. And so Zay Smith, he can literally separate out because his arms hang all the way down past his thighs. Definitely long arms that helps up front. Jim?
He has 6'9" wingspan, by the way. For a 6-foot player, that's very unusual.
Maybe 6 foot.
Yeah.
Well, he's listed as 6'1". I'm going down an inch.
He's got the extra size cleats, the special ones they give you.
Yes, the tall ones on hard turf. Thoughts, Jim, outside of his wingspan?
Well, man, he's got a wide array of moves that have impressed some of the Cal defensive linemen. I've asked about him, and they just like how game ready he's come in. And one interesting factoid, we have Luke Beckett, the former 6 or 7 year defensive lineman with Cal, that posts on our board, and he is super impressed with the high level of technique that he came in with, because he said typically guys who transfer in, it takes a lot of mechanical work to get them really on the right page. A lot of defensive line players come in with sloppy habits, but he's coming from a tiny little school, but he seems to be very, very game ready and advanced.
Yeah, Mike,
when you step up to that power forward, it's a big difference, right? Between the lower level schools up to power forward, it's a huge difference.
Yeah, Mike, I was going to say a couple things that we've heard from the staff. One, they got more 300-pound plus guys than they've had in the entire Wilcox era. So they got a lot of big bodies up there.
Right.
I think the second thing is the depth, right? So, they were always scrambling to find 5 or 6 guys they could rotate in to keep fresh, especially against these modern offenses. They're going to go tempo, longer drives on the field. And so I think they've got 8 or 9 guys who can actually play. And that includes some redshirt freshmen, Legend Journeys flashed. Ike Okafor's really flashed as well. There's some of those young guys. If they can find some consistency, I think you're going to see them getting some snaps.
Yeah, and I mean the key, right? Playing that nickel 2-5 look, you're also going to go into odd looks. You're going to, now it's so multiple on defense. Having 4 guys who can really rotate solidly, and then having a couple of backups who can then win you after that. You get those long drives, long games. And so they got some bodies up there. So, it's promising. If you have a good D-line, you have those good big bodies, you can stop the run, which means you're going to have to force people to pass. you're going to get into second and long, right? You're going to keep teams behind the chains, which is one of the questions for me this year, because we'll talk about the offense in a little bit, but defense is going to have to support the offense early on. Offense is young. Offense takes time to build chemistry. Offense has to grow together. And so we're going to see that. And this defense is going to have to support them, being able to stop the run and then focus people down into the passing game and then getting after them when you get them behind the chains is huge. And to do that, it's going to take those edge rushers, right? In our system, those are our outside linebackers. Well, the one name that I know coming back in is Ryan McCullough, right? He's a guy that we knew last year, one of the best outside pass rush guys for the Bears in terms of defense. You lose a lot of guys. David Reese, he's now at Syracuse. You lose guys that go away. And so this whole group
Xavier
really,
Carl, right?
Xavier Carlton's gone, right? Check Fall, David Reese, all those guys. And so we're left with some new names out there at that outside backer spot at the edge where we need to supply pressure. Talk about some of those guys.
Yeah,
Jeff,
McCullough is really where it starts. I mean, he's virtually been unblockable, and when you hear that, when fans hear that, they always think, "Oh no, that must mean the line's not good." But he's a guy that got it done on the field last year when he had the chance, when he wasn't injured. He just brings an elite, quick first step. His moves are, I mean, I was talking with Chris Victor and Jaden Wayne today, and I was asking what their thoughts are on McCullough. They had a nickname for him. It had something to do with one of his moves. I wish I could remember it, but he's kind of like the gold standard to these guys. He just gets it done virtually every play out there.
Yeah. It's funny, I think he played 9-man football in high school.
Yeah, he did.
In the San Diego area. And look, a lot of times the prototypical outside linebackers are 6'5", 6'6", really long arms. He's not the tallest guy. I mean, he's got a nice wide set of shoulders and longer arms, but they're not, the Zay Smith freakish kind of long arms. But the one thing he does well is he bends. So he's quick, and then he can get underneath the pads of those tackles. And when you do that, you got a chance to get to the quarterback. And I think he's primed for, potential all-conference season.
And that's, Vic Soto now, defensive coordinator, that's his position group, right? Those rush guys, those edge guys. And so having a guy our coordinator, the guy who's calling our fronts, who's doing all that for us, it makes a big difference in terms of the way those guys play up there. Usually it's your middle linebackers coach, who's calling defense. But in this case, Vic is going to be making those calls. And so he's got to come along. Who are some of the other new names, Greg?
So TJ Bush was a really big get in the portal. Played at Liberty last year, was an all-conference player for them. Kind of a different body style. He looks like the old 4-3 defensive ends. He's 265, 270 pounds. He's thick. He's strong. He's the guy who represents that I'm going to hold the corner at the point of attack on run plays. Mm-hmm. He could throw around the tight ends, and we've seen it. He was an interesting guy because in the first part of fall camp, when they weren't in pads, you looked at him and said, "Hey, man, he may not be the most explosive, quick, guy I've ever seen." And then the pads came on, and you're like, "Whoa, wait a second. This guy is a big, strong man who likes to mix it up." And I think Coach Wilcox even said today that he's the guy likely to start opposite Ryan on the other side.
Yeah, he did say that.
And it's hard to tell, when you see a guy coming in from Liberty, they notoriously don't play the toughest schedule. And so, like a guy like that coming in, you don't know what he's going to be like going up against competition. And so it's good to see him show out. To your point, Greg, when you put the pads on, some dudes just seem to have rebar in their spine. Like they're just more firm than others. And if you hit them, it's like, oh, that hurts. And hopefully Bush is one of those guys. We'll jump from...
There's a couple guys that I think will get after the quarterback really well. I mean, Serene Tonkara we saw last year kind of had some spot duty as a pass rusher.
Yep.
But you look at his kind of hurries or pressures, per snap played last year was really pretty promising. And he just looks older, more experienced, stronger, quicker. I think he's going to be a factor. But the guy that I think they're really excited about, another guy that moved up from the lower levels, Chris Victor. He was playing at Chattanooga. And he looks like, and I was talking to Ron Rivera about this the other day, he just looks like he's cut out of that NFL mold. Really high waistline, long legs, long arms, an explosive athlete. In fact, I think Ron's line to me was, He doesn't yet know how good he can be. And the upside here is really high.
Yeah.
I was
Well,
expecting
it's
to see a
good.
guy
We're going to need some guys.
I was expecting to see a guy that looked more like Tankara when I interviewed him today, Chris Victor, and he's a big guy. And Jaden Wayne is a really big guy too. Those were two NFL bodies I was talking to today, so I think that'll serve him well. I think Tankara's relative slightness might have held him back a little bit last year, so hopefully he's one of those guys that's seen some nice growth in the weight room in this off season.
All right, so now let's move to inside linebacker. I think Cade Olave is clearly a known, right? Preseason all-conference guy. He's a stud. He was by far the most explosive player on the field last year in every game he played in. And so there's a guy that it would be great to keep him in the offseason. I know there were some rumblings about maybe not keeping him, or everybody's always coming after your best guy. But to see him stay at Cal to hold down that position is huge. So you got Cade Olave, but then who is going to fill that spot for Teddy Buchanan? Because we literally had the best linebacker combination, the linebacker tandem in the country last year between those two. There weren't any teams out there that were better. And so I think figuring out who that's going to be, I know Luke Farrelly has shown up a lot in practice so far. He's a guy that we've really seen a lot. Boom Jock, another name who we're going to be looking at out there. Talk about some of the names that you're seeing in practice, Greg. Talk about some of these guys at that inside linebacker spot, which is, by the way, essential in a Justin Wilcox defense.
Yeah. Haven't we seen that year after year, the way he
Yeah.
designs that system? So everything gets funneled to those linebackers.
Yeah.
And I think Cade took a nice step forward even after having a great sophomore campaign with his read react instincts, because he'd always been such a good athlete. He was just follow ball. And now, that guy's sweating it in the weight room the film room, and he is he's just playing at a different level. So I think the key for him is staying healthy. He's had a couple of dings that he's going to have to work through, and hopefully he stay healthy. Farrelly is a little bit like the second coming of Cade. He's one of those guys who's quick and fast. He's just a surprisingly good athlete. Runs sideline to sideline. You'd think he's a safety out there. It'll be interesting to see, though, as a redshirt freshman, whether they have the confidence in him, stepping into that starting role from day one. I don't know, Jim, I'd be interested to get your thoughts on Taggart and Boom as well.
Well, I think a lot of people assume that Taggart would be the guy that would move into the spot just because he was so productive at BYU. He's kind of a prototype inside guy that fits the system well. But you just keep hearing about Farrelly over and over again from the staff and the players. He's just a super quick and aggressive guy that seems to have good instincts out there. And sure enough, Wilcox mentioned him first when the media was asking about inside linebacker today and potential starting guys. I still kind of tend to think that unless Taggart's slow in picking up the play calling on defense, that he might be the guy. But it sounds like
he's looked good. He's looked good, and he's wearing one of those old school neck rolls. So if he does get in, I think Cal fans will enjoy that. I was having some Jarrett Willard flashbacks.
There you go, Jarrett Willard. That's exactly where I was going to go with that. That's awesome. Yeah, and I mean, that's the one thing that will make you see the bench in that system. If you're a linebacker who doesn't pick it up quickly, even if you're talented as hell, you're not going to play in a Justin Wilcox defense, because that spot is absolutely essential to what they do. They funnel everything to it. They directional rush. They create seams for backers. They use all the different dogs and pressures that they can from that backer spot. So I tell you what, Cade, you said he sweated in the film room, and Cade did, but he sweated in the weight room as well. Because we came back this year, I was like, oh my God, that's Cade. Like his legs are just trunks now, and he's moving like he did before. Such an explosive dude. So truly impressive there. If you fill in that other spot, right, whether it's Taggart, whether it's Farrelly, whether it's Jock, or whether it's a combination thereof, that's the position that really has to hold up. Defensive line blocks the blockers, linebackers then have to do their thing in the system. So that's going to be the absolute key. And then can they get the edge rush? Because the secondary is brand new. Besides Cam Sidney, like there are no new faces back there. I went back through all my game notes and I was looking back because I remember how many fantastic safeties that we've had recently. I mean, just fantastic. And you look back, it was Ashton Davis, it was Jalen Hawkins, it was Elijah Hicks, Daniel Scott, Patrick McMorris, Craig Woodson. Like all these dudes are absolute dudes at that position. That every time you came into fall camp, you felt totally safe in the back end because you knew you had leaders back there. This year, we don't come in with any of those guys. We don't have an established guy who was there, who's been leading the charge in the back end. And so, we're getting guys out there, and I've seen them at practice. At the corner position, you got Brent Austin, goes by Paco. And he's been playing pretty well, actually. He's looked pretty good out there at that corner position. Masses has looked good. Cam Sidney, of course, right? That nickel spot last year, nickel spot this year. And then there's a whole bunch of new names for guys who have transferred in, who've come in. So talk to me about, we literally lost almost 90% of the snaps at that position from guys leaving. Who can we expect to see in that defensive back end?
Jim, why don't you go first here?
Well, Isaiah Crosby was the guy that got plenty of snaps last year. He didn't start. He looks like he's pretty much got a lock on one of the safety positions. Yeah. He's got good ball instincts. He's fairly solid in run support. He's got a little bit of a slight build, but he's a willing tackler. And opposite him is kind of a bit of an upset with Aiden Manitai, a freshman coming in and as an early entry in the spring, who played in the Polynesian Bowl. He started there. Jaron was in that bowl game too, along with a couple of two other Cal guys that came in. He's just a guy that has good ball instincts. He's got really good speed. I didn't know he was as fast as he is. And Wilcox was talking about him today. He said he's a guy that just doesn't make many mistakes. And if he does, he learns from them instantly. And he says that he asks advanced level questions that third or fourth year guys ask. So his understanding of the game is clear. So it looks like he has a really good shot to start opposite Crosby.
The funny thing is we've had some bigger safeties, guys 6 foot, 6'1", 200, 210 pounds. They could come downhill and hit you. This team as a whole is the biggest Justin Wilcox team. You look across the roster, the guys are just bigger. The one position that's not the case is safety.
Yeah.
There's one outlier, which is Tristan Dunn, who transferred from Washington. He's 6'5", so he is almost a hybrid linebacker type. But the rest of those guys are 5'10", 5'11", 190 pounds. That's going to be an interesting thing to watch, how they hold up in run support. But I'll tell you this, Isaiah Crosby, he can really move. And one of the interesting things I thought from fall camp is that, when they know a guy's a starter, they generally start to give reps to the other guys. But with Crosby, I think they know that safety position is so much mental. He was playing with the ones, the twos, and the threes, even though he's been penciled in as the starter from day one.
Yeah, there's a reason that Cal sends DBs on to the next level. NFL schemes are really complicated, right? NFL schemes, they're playing match coverage, they're playing zone within man schemes. All kinds of different stuff. And Cal teaches that. Their defensive secondary works a very sophisticated back end, a lot like Saban did with what he did to start with that 3-match coverage. And so that's the reason a lot of Cal's guys go on. Yes, they're talented. Yes, they have all that. But when they get to camp, they're not learning new stuff. They're doing what they did at Cal. There's a lot of assignment-oriented things that you have to do as a DB in that Cal secondary. And there's a lot of checks and there's a lot of communication that has to happen. And so the guys who are going to play are the guys that can take that in.
Yeah, you know what? You saying that, Mike, makes the fact that Aiden Manitai is likely the starter next to Crosby that much more remarkable, right? Because they bring in Drew Polidor. He started for 2 years for a really good Montana team in the FCS. Tristan Dunn, third-year guy out of Washington, big-time recruit. Yet Aiden's beating him out.
Yeah.
I really like Dunn, too. Dunn's got very unusual size for a safety at 6'4", and he's got very good ball skills. He was an offensive player in high school, and it shows out there. So I do expect for him to see plenty of reps out there. I think he brings some juice to the backfield.
Well, in that position, you always end up seeing 7, 8, 9 guys during the season because inevitably somebody's going to get nicked. They're going to try something else. They're going to like different matchups. And so you're going to see a lot of guys. They have to have depth. But it's the one position on defense I circled. I was like, I don't know these guys. Like, everybody can show up in practice. You and I, we talked about this earlier, Greg. Like, anybody can show up in practice in fall camp and look great and everything else. When the real bullets start flying, that's when I figure out, is he a player or is he not? And that's when you're going to have to see it show up on the field. So that's
So it's a little bit, Mike, isn't it? Like the quarterback position on defense, like
for sure.
the mental checks, the play from that safety position, that is no joke. And to your point, you're not going to know whether we've got guys that are ready to go until we get to Corvallis.
Until you match them up. I've seen, and maybe not even Corvallis, maybe Minnesota, right? I've seen a lot of guys come into the season, have a lot of discussions with Coach Wilcox and others. We're like, oh yeah, this guy is a dude. He's for real. He's going to, and then a year or two later, they're like, yeah, he can't play. So, you get these conversations where you believe in somebody coming out of their first camp, and then you see what happens on the field. And so I hope that all of these players are the very real players that coaches hope they are. But live bullets changes everything. And it has from before I was playing, since back when Dick Erickson was quarterback at Cal, and even before that. So, live bullets make the players. And this secondary, that's the question. Defensive line can be great. Linebackers can be great. If we can't match up in man coverage, if we can't hold our zones, if we can't figure out that communication gap, we're going to be in trouble back there. Because teams will RPO us, hold the backers, one-on-one us with the DBs, and then they'll pick us apart.
Yeah, it makes me think back 2 seasons ago because we came out of fall camp and they were playing more zone in the camp than I had seen, and it turned out they had to. That was probably the weakest secondary that Justin Wilcox had 2 years ago. And then last year, Noel Williams coming into his own, Marcus Harris coming here. They could play a lot more man, and we saw, they finished, I think, one of the top 20 pass defenses in the country.
Mm-hmm.
Had a few games, didn't quite go the way they wanted, but otherwise they were pretty solid. I would say, though, if you were to ask me what the biggest positive surprise at camp is, I would say the play of the outside cornerbacks. I would say Paco Austin and Zeke Massis. And again, we don't know for sure because they're going against Cal's wide receiver core, and we'll talk about that in a minute. There's some question marks there. But those guys have looked really, really good. And I would say this. I think Terrence Brown, Justin Wilcox, they know what good cornerbacks look like at this point. And I'll tell you, they got nothing but big praise for Paco Austin, particularly. Yeah. But they like that group. Jim, I'm curious about your thoughts on the nickelback spot and what you think will unfold there. A lot of guys getting snaps there in camp.
Yeah, I like Cam Sidney for his ball skills. Going back to his prep days, I mean, the guy is covering receivers like he's a receiver himself. He's a little on the small side, so his physicality is a question. But he's been pretty consistent out there whenever he's had the chance to see the field and practice and scrimmages and a bit in game time. And he's going to get pushed by Josiah Wagner. Wagner came in last year, but it was from LSU with, former 4-star prep. And he just didn't really force his way into a lot of playing time. And I think he's been playing better in the spring and the fall so far. But just based on experience and time in the system, I'd kind of give the edge to Sidney a little bit. And what have you seen out of Wagner, Greg, so far this fall?
Well, he's healthier. I mean, last year he was constantly nicked up. They loved his athleticism. They loved the potential, but what's the old saying? The best ability is availability. Yeah. He struggled to stay on the field. I think he finished the camp on a high note. He had a really nice second scrimmage Saturday night. I think his ceiling athletically is higher than Cam Sidney's, but Cam just seems to always be in the right place. A little bit like what we saw at safety last year after a couple injuries and Marcus Williams came in, or Miles Williams, I'm sorry, came in and played really well. Cam reminds me of him, obviously playing a different position, but.
Yeah, and that position, those guys are so high strung, right? It's like wide receiver. If they're fast guys, if they can run like that, then there's a higher propensity for injury too, right? So availability being the key in that defensive back end. You need tough guys who can run, right? All those things have to come together. So again, live bullets will tell the tale when it comes to the secondary. That'll all be good. Let's flip it over. Let's talk about the offensive side of the ball. I think for me, let's just finish up on defense. Biggest keys. Is the D-line really better? We have 5 seniors for depth up there to start off. You got to believe with 5 seniors, those guys are going to find a rotation that really works. Can they be a force on second down? Can they keep teams behind the chains? And can they force teams into third and long situations and then get after the passer? That's key. If they do, can they play man on the back end? If you can't play man on the back end, you're sending teams into third and long. You can't create pressures, can't get to the quarterback. It also turns out to be a very long season for you. So I think combining those two, the front and the secondary, going to be essential. I think with our defensive line, especially the size, if linebackers, Kato Olave turns out like we know he is, and if we find that at a spot, be it Taggart, be it Forelli, we'll be able to stop the run. With our schedule this year, with Cal's schedule this year, we should be able to stop the run. We don't play a lot of fierce running teams. I looked at the schedule and I was writing it down. We got Minnesota, potentially Louisville. Has always got a good offense. SMU runs the ball. They got Kevin Jennings, that quarterback who changes things up on it. But really, that's the three big ones in terms of stopping the run. And then everybody else is going to kind of sling it around the park. So if you can force teams into the third and long, if you can pin them into stuff that you like and force them to hold the ball longer, it should be good.
I think some will depend on the health of the defensive line. With Burrell out for the season, your margin of error is a little bit lower. Wilkins is dinged up, and Tyson Ford, the Notre Dame transfer, is dinged up too. Traditionally, McKenzie's had a hard time staying healthy. He's healthy right now. So you have to hope you don't take too many more hits there. But if they don't, I do like the depth that this line has. I think they're a legit too deep on the line and pretty stout. I don't know how much pressure they're going to get from the edge, but I think a lot of the edge pressure is going to come from the outside linebackers rather than traditional defensive ends anyway.
Yeah, I come out of camp believing that the run defense is going to be solid. Will it be as good as it was last year with Teddy and Ricky gone? I don't know, but I don't think it's going to take much of a drop off if it does. And I think I'm bullish on the pass rush. I think we've got more athletes out there at outside linebacker. And hopefully that mitigates some of the youth and lack of at least experience within the Cal system in the secondary.
Yeah, when I think back to those defensive edge rush guys, I think back to that Washington team, right, that had the 270, 280-pound outside linebackers who were really defensive ends who could drop, but they just crushed the pass rush. There's nothing you could do outside because they were a match for tackles, but they moved like outside linebackers. And so ideally, if you can get those guys, don't have a lot of those guys in camp. So they're going to have to figure out ways situationally to position it. I think we have athletes for sure, but once again, we'll be able to tell once the pads are go and it's a full live kickoff. That's when we'll see those guys show up. All right, now we're going to flip it. Let's talk about the offense. Just found out Jaron is going to be our quarterback. So Jaron Sengapolatelli, the freshman coming in, going to be the starter. Greg, talk about that. You told me today, so.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. It was a battle that early in the spring when Jaron showed up, he looked like he was a long ways away from being a Power 4 quarterback starter, right? Played in that high school system, which was basically see your receiver, throw to the receiver. There wasn't a whole lot of pre-snap or post-snap reads going on. He didn't have the greatest footwork. He didn't have the greatest fundamentals at the position. But, we watched him through spring, and by the last 6 practices of the spring, it was like step function better because the guy has an elite arm. He has a crazy quick release, and he's got this innate accuracy that allows him to put the ball where he wants it to go. I think the other thing, and Justin mentioned this today when asked about the choice, he keeps his eyes downfield. He does not drop his eyes, and he can find guys open late in the pocket if the O-line can give him protection. I think, the big questions for him are all the classic ones for a true freshman. I mean, it would seem to me he has the poise, demeanor, and personality to handle it. Reminds me a little of Jared Goff in that way, kind of unruffled, when he's out there. But, people are going to blitz him from a lot of different angles. They're going to disguise coverages on him. Is he going to take care of the ball? Is he going to make the easy throws? We know he can make the spectacular ones, but we'll see about everything else.
One thing that helps with him is he's got this versatility with his arm slots. A lot of quarterbacks, Mike, this, if their mechanics are off, their throws are erratic, and he can sidewind it. He can throw around the rush effectively, and that's something that I asked a couple of the defensive players I talked to today what stands out about his play as a quarterback, as a young quarterback, and they said it's just kind of hard to get a read on where he's going to release it. He slings it like Mahomes, where there's an arm in his face, he just goes right around him. I think that's an interesting element to his game, and he's also super accurate when they do the basket toss from a long distance where they're trying to throw it through the net into the garbage can. A lot of the guys, they're not too close, and he'll sink a bunch of them. I mean, that takes pinpoint accuracy to hit that goal from 40 yards away, but he can do it.
Yeah. So I will put a caveat on your very accurate. He is innately accurate in the pocket when he's moving. When he's throwing at the net drill that you're talking about, when his mechanics are good, he's really accurate.
Yeah.
And that's an issue of being focused as a young quarterback, learning to be able to focus every single play. When he gets behind a line, that focus comes together because he has to, right? He's feeling that pressure. He's a guy, I think, that when the energy level comes up a little bit, a little more adrenaline, he gets dialed into what he's doing. For him to improve at that position as a quarterback, right? This is my position, right? So I can pick it apart, piece by piece. His mechanics, and they have, so this is not a knock on him. His mechanics will have to improve. All of our mechanics will have to improve. I go back and watch my college game film now, and I throw up in my mouth a little bit because my mechanics were so bad. It was awful. So he's going to improve. His mechanics are going to get better. He's going to learn how to play in the position. In high school, he was just playing football. He was loving it, right? He was a guy that was like, yeah, let's just go throw it around. That's all he did is go throw the football all the time. But now he's going to have to play within a system. And so within a system, getting your mechanics and getting your feet to the right places before we throw are going to help him. And those are the things that he has to learn. Those are the things the young freshman has to learn. Being unfazed is great, but not causing things to phase you is even better. Being ahead of the curve on that, right? Not being the one who's making the mistakes that then throw me off my game. He is big, he's strong, he's tough, his eyes stay downfield. I love that. And here's the thing between him and Devin Brown for me. If you had an established offense with a bunch of guys who had been playing in the system and somebody needed to step into a system where you had this core, you would choose Devin Brown because he's been in the college system. He's a guy who's, he played at Ohio State. He's got Devin Brown has the goods. He has the goods of the position, right? He can play the position, but the whole offense is new. We don't know any of it. At best, you could have 4, maybe 5 guys who played for Cal last year on the field in the first 2D who were actual players, right? Tron Gazelle's known, Nick Morrow, Fred Williams, Vadakani, right? These are the guys who you could see. Other than that, it's a whole new system. Like you've got a bunch of brand new faces out there that you don't know about. And so throwing in another a guy to that mix with a huge upside, I don't think kills you. And because, Jim, you were talking about the arm slot, he can throw from any position, he's going to get pressure. One thing I can tell you, in college football these days, but after watching us, he's going to get pressured this year. You have to be able to get that ball off from any position as you're getting pressured, moving and being accurate. He can do that better than Devin Brown can. He's just better at that as a quarterback. And so that gives him a slight edge. He's a guy that under pressure will deliver more accurately, more consistently, and doesn't know how big it is because he's just a freshman. So I think that plays to him.
Mike, let me ask you a question about that because, obviously both guys very capable. From what we saw both in the spring and fall camp, they were pretty close. It wasn't like it was a clear, hey, one guy has absolutely outplayed the other guy. But you did get a feeling watching, or at least I did, that the team believed in Jaren. And thinking about what you just said a minute ago, I wonder how much of that is you have all these new faces on the offense. They don't know Devin. They don't know Jaren. They don't even know the system. So I wonder how much the coaches took into account their feedback and input on who should be their leader.
So here's one thing I'll tell you, and that tell me if you pick up on this or if you agree with me. Jared Goff, Fernando Mendoza, Sanga Politelli. What did they have in common about their game? Like if you were to compare them all, they didn't have a lot in common in terms of physical skills or anything else. All 3 of them were constantly smiling.
Yeah.
They were always smiling. And your team picks that up. When you are having a good time, when you are enjoying the moment, when you are up to the challenge, whether it's a challenge or not, no matter what happens, if you're bringing that smile with you, if you're not like when you're bearing down, when you're feeling stressed, other people feel that from you too, right? So this is the power of connection in a team. This is the power, especially at that quarterback position, where they want you to lead. When you're smiling, they think you know something they don't. And that's powerful in a team. And so all three of those guys brought that to their game. All three of those guys were favorites of their teammates. And that's a huge reason for it. Now, you have to stack that on top of they're competent. And obviously all three of those guys were competent. But they brought that part of it. And I think a lot of quarterbacks go in, they're stressed and they're constantly, and let's be honest, I like Harsin. The conversations I've had with him, I've enjoyed our conversations. I like the way he thinks, but he is hard on quarterbacks. He is intense, he is demanding, and he is going to put the pressure on you. And so you have to survive that. And when Jaren comes out there and he's smiling the whole time during that, the team can see it and they respond to him.
Jaren said he likes that and needs that.
That's probably true, right? That's probably true watching.
Yeah, we can't comment on any specific plays that we saw, but I will say there was a moment in one of the scrimmages where Jaren made a play that you don't see quarterbacks often make.
Yeah.
It was a physical, I'm going to win play, and he did it, and the offense went bananas. That entire sideline, you could feel their joy in his having made that play.
Yeah, everybody came literally from the sideline to come meet him, which was awesome. That was really good, and you could see the team rally around him. But that's that joy, right? Bring that joy to the game, bring that belief to the game, and that belief becomes infectious. That's what the great leaders bring is they bring the power of belief and repetition. I believe it, and I'm going to say it over and over and over and over. And when you bring that with you, that becomes infectious to your teammates. And so you don't have to be the most skilled guy in the world. Tom Brady's not the most skilled guy in the world. He's talented. He's smart. He's got all this, but he believed and he brought that belief to his team. And that's a huge thing. And I think that's why Jaren won the spot. He stood out front and did that, believed in it, smiled all the time. And he's got great tools. They're just very raw with him. He's going to get better his whole time. All right. So enough about quarterbacks. The position that makes and breaks a team, period. Offensive line. And this is the one position that has been vexing, let's say, as a former quarterback for me for the last several years, is that we have not been able to nail this down. Once again, we bring in 4 guys who started in the interior on the offensive line. At the D1 level, we bring in 2 tackles as well, because we're trying to ensure that offensive line. I am still, having watched practice for a long time, not exactly sure what we're going to do up front. I've seen Nick Morrow up there a ton, right? You expect Freddie Williams to be good. Suapi Vadakani's been hit and miss. What are we doing up front this year at that offensive line position?
Yeah, I love where you started that, because I think there's now 11 guys on the roster who have started in FBS, or more than a handful, 4, 5, 6 plus FBS games. A bunch of guys have started a full season. So there is more experience depth than I can ever remember seeing. That's really good news. I think the energy that Famika, the new offensive line coach, has brought has been palpable. And he's a guy that wants to push the pile. He wants an attitude and aggressiveness, kind of a little bit of a junkyard dog approach. And you can feel it and see it. I think the best and most obvious sign of improvement has been in the run blocking. There has been a consistent ability to move that front 7 we talked about a minute ago that we think is going to be pretty good against the run. They've moved them off and had a consistent number of big chunk runs. That's the great news. I think the work in progress is in the pass protection, and particularly at the tackle positions. I think a little bit of a surprise is Braden Miller. He was a guy they weren't sure if he was a full-time tackle or a guard when he came here. And he's a guy that coaches told me nobody worked harder to become a leader, to become more consistent, to become more of a technician than Braden Miller. And I think he's got one of the tackle spots locked up. I think there's a battle with Leon Bell and Nick Morrow on the other side. And, hopefully that is a bit of one of those iron, sharpens iron kind of things. And the best man wins the job. You spoke earlier, Mike, about offenses take a while. I think this O-line is going to take a while, not only to figure out who the best 5 guys are, but for those 5 guys to come together as a unit and be better than the sum of their parts.
Jim?
Yeah, I agree. I do like the fact that for the most part, these are new guys that are pushing their way into the starting lineup. We've seen what we've had with Vadakani and Morrow and Williams and Swinney and those guys, and they've been adequate to solid, particularly Vadakani. Um, but I do like the fact that a lot of these new guys are starting. As Greg said, Miller was really not too much on the radar last year. He was injured. His strength wasn't and his weight wasn't particularly where it needed to be, but he's been healthy and made a real transformation, and he's looked really good out there. Um, I think they could potentially play him on the backside. So with JKS being a lefty, that would mean right tackle for him. And Wilcox mentioned that Bell has rounded into shape nicely. That's obviously something that's going to serve him well. If you're sluggish out there on the field, you're probably going to get beat in the level of competition that they're playing with. And I like Ruffins on the inside. He's had a really consistent fall from everything that I hear, and he was a guy that had committed to Stanford and he flipped to Cal late. And then there's going to be a battle at center with Lamar Robinson and Davian Harley. Harley coming in the fall and Robinson being here in the spring. But it seems like Robinson has a bit of an edge right now, and not surprising since he's been in the system a little bit longer. But I do like the fact that it feels like they have a legit 2 deep on the offensive line. And when in the world have we been able to say that in the last couple decades?
Love the optimism. I really do. It's,
I'm
so
not saying elite. I'm just saying that they have reasonable
here's
depth.
my take. I hope that these guys overperform, that they, become really great. From what I've watched, we are not great in second long. We're not great in third down against our own defense. Now, defense should always be ahead of the offense in camp because you get the same reads, the same calls, everything all the time. And so you're hearing the checks, you know what they're doing, and all you have to do is get one guy home, beat one guy. And so defense is always ahead of the offense in camp. That's just the way it works. But I want to see pass protection. Oregon State will tell us a little bit. Minnesota will tell us a little bit more, I think, because you get better athletes. And so I want to see the tackles. You have to have a mentality of wanting to dominate your opponent, right? You have to have the mentality of wanting to crush your guy and put him into the ground and drive and move people. Like that toughness, that nastiness, you have to have it, especially inside. But you also have to have guys on the outside who think of themselves as athletes, as specialists, who can move in space, who can dance and flow and do things because they're going up against some of the best athletes on the field at that outside backer position. And so, Troy Eisen and I talk about this all the time. All-American left tackle for me. He was the runner-up for the Rookie of the Year in the NFL. Phenomenal football player. Just great. And we talk about that tackle position all the time. And taking a quarter step or half step or the angle that you take on your step, all those little things, the micro little things that you don't think about are so important at that spot. And I want to see our guys get those things right. I think, Fred Williams has the tools to be a great tackle. I think Nick Morrow has the tools to be a great tackle. They have the unique athletic gifts and size together to be there. I want to see them all adapt those. I want to see the new guys coming in, right? Adapt those skills to learn how to play that position. That's going to be the key. College football has become a game of those guys winning on the edge or blocking on the edge. And if you win that battle, you're going to win a lot of games. And that's where we have really, really lacked in the Justin Wilcox era. We have not had tackles, period. And so our quarterbacks have been forced to do it on their own if they get behind the chains.
Yeah, that's a great point. And look, when you're starting a true freshman, I mean, the most important position on the field just became your offensive line. There's no doubt about it.
Sure.
I think some of what you're hearing from Jim and I is relative optimism, meaning,
Right.
we've been there watching the O-lines over the last few years, and I think there's a lot of encouraging signs in the size, athleticism, and approach of this O-line. But they got a long ways to go. And at least for me, Mike, I've always been a guy that said communication and trust among those 5 guys is really important. And
Super
I
important.
think it's great that you have a lot of competition, but when you're swapping guys in every snap, I think it's hard to establish that, which is why I think this is a unit you're going to have to see hopefully a lot of improvement by game 4 or 5 in the season than where they are today.
Yeah, I agree. And I think offenses take a while to gel, right? That's what I was saying early on. That's why defenses are always ahead. Offenses have to find that chemistry together. Robbie Tobeck, who played at Washington State, ended up playing for Atlanta for 8 years, for Seattle for 8 years, and just, I think, got inducted into the Ring of Honor, said it perfectly. He said, if an offense is a band of brothers, the offensive line are the quintuplets. Like they have to be so tight that they all move, think, act together, step together. And it's true. And that's the most important position on the field. I don't care what coach you are. That offensive line as a unit is the most important unit on the field. If you don't do anything, if you can't do it up front there, then you don't give yourself a very good chance of doing it anywhere else. You can have the greatest defense in the world. If you can't move people, if you can't run the ball, if you can't protect your quarterback, you're in trouble. And that's that. And so
I
as
really
a
hope
quarterback, I appreciate those guys. I love those guys. I just want to see the Cal offensive line be what the Cal offensive line should be. Now I'm starting to speak passionately because Harvey Salem, right? You go Keith Karts, Troy Ozine, Todd Stussy, go down the line. And there are so many great, Ed White, I mean, so many great linemen that have come through Cal. That's where we should be phenomenal. And I want to see that offensive line get back to what it should be.
I really hope they play the projected starting 5 together these next full 2 weeks heading into the Oregon State game. If they're mixing and matching all the way up to the end, it's going to really affect their cohesiveness because they haven't been nearly as consistent as they need to be, particularly in the pass blocking, as Greg noted earlier.
Justin Albert said today they're likely to play 7 guys against Oregon State. So I think they're still figuring it out. That's either good news because there's competition and the guys are good, or it's not so great news for the reasons we just cited.
Yeah, I would love to see him handle it, right? And Jim, to your point, I think it's a fantastic point. We're going to see a lot of gap scheme running, counter, power, outside G. Like, this is where you're working tandem blocks. Guys are working together. 2 guys getting the double, coming off to the next level. You have to figure it out. You have to be good at it. Pass protection is all about communications these days in college football because you're sending loopers, you're getting blitzers, you're figuring out gaps. And so you have to have that communication. Guys have to work together. Okay, that's the O-line. I think we covered. We got all the offensive line here. One of the biggest losses for personnel-wise this year, in my opinion, was Jack Henry's. He was a dude that was so productive. He was automatic. He did not make mistakes at that tight end position. And so coming back into that tight end position is going to be huge because historically in Brian Harson's offense, you're going to see a lot of tight ends on the field. You're going to see these guys. They have to be versatile athletes. So you come in, Landon Morris, Mason Minnie, Jeffrey Johnson, some of the names that you're going to see at that position. Let's talk about that tight end position. What are we going to see there?
Yeah. So let's start with Jeffrey Johnson because he's the returner, right?
Yep.
Former walk-on, has been an effective blocker, played a lot of snaps of football for Cal over the last couple of years. He was one of the first names Ron Rivera brought up to the press and to donors last spring after spring ball. He said, I think that guy is a flat-out ball player. He's he'll stick his nose in there. He'll do whatever you ask him to do. He's not the most dynamic receiver, but he's that steadying influence. He's not going to make a lot of mistakes, and he's going to block like a bulldozer. So I think that's a great kind of foundational piece for what they want to do in playing both 11s and 12s in terms of using that tight end as a blocker.
And just to finish on Jeffrey Johnson, he's also one of the best human beings you'll ever meet. He is a Cal dude all the way.
Love that.
Yeah.
And so they bring in Mason Minnie, Idaho FCS kid, lightly recruited out of high school, but he gets into the portal and he has like 7 Power 4 offers. Didn't play a ton as a young guy actually at Idaho. So you're wondering, what's this all about? But you see him in the spring and you realize he's got that perfect build, longer arms, shoulders, high waist. He can run, and he's a tough kid. I will say, though, that he's got to be one of the top 3 or 4 most improved players from that first spring practice to where he is now. He caught some big balls on Saturday night, including a nice touchdown pass where he had to kind of almost block out the cornerback to go up and get it. I think he's the best dual, could both block and receive of that room right now. And he's likely to see a lot of what Andrews would have seen. Morris is a classic split him out, a little bit like they used Corey Dykes last year. Dyches. He can really run, and he's got the body control when the ball's up in the air. He's going to be a quarterback's really good friend. Seam routes, curls, he can do it all. So they got three guys. They're all a little bit different from one another. The key for me is they got to keep those three guys healthy because they're going to want to play two of them a lot at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, keeping that position, like you said, you got three, and they're all unique in terms of their set of skills. If you don't keep all three of them healthy, you're in trouble, especially when you get down in the red zone, in the goal, near the goal line. Jim?
To talk a little bit more about Landon Morris, he's a guy that has really shown up since he's been here. He's caught some really nice balls. He looks like a receiver out there with the way he runs his routes and just the way he moves. He's not as physical as the other two, obviously, so that'll limit some of his situational playing, but he'll create some mismatches, and you could see that it was evident in some of the plays he's made so far. I think he seems to be kind of what we were hoping Dyches would be last year. The same type of a mold of a tight end, but I think I've liked what I've seen out of him more so far than I saw out of Dyches last year.
All right. And then let's talk about the position, right? There's two, we left the two on offense with the most questions last, I think. Everybody read about it this early spring. We all talked about it. There was a huge mass exodus at that running back position. Change your running back coach. And in my history of playing football too, that's one position where the guys really attached to their coach as well. And so I think you lose, Aristotle Thompson and all of a sudden your guys are unsure on unstable footing and you get a mass exodus at that spot. They bring in some transfers. Brandon Hyde comes in. Kendrick Raphael out of NC State. Brandon Hyde's out of UTSA. LJ Johnson comes in out of SMU. So 3 transfers coming in. The only returning back with the carry is Jamal Wiley, right? So there's no Cal production in that room. Everybody else that transferred into that room were backups. They played in backup roles last year. Now, everybody goes through that, except for, Jared Goff and now Sanga Politelli. Like, you're a backup until you become a starter. And so everybody has to graduate through those positions. But what do we expect to see from this running back room this year? Especially we talked about offensive line, run blocking, I agree, is better. These guys have to make it happen behind there. What are their unique skills? What makes them different? What do they bring to us?
Yeah, I'll start with actually where they're similar. These are the 3 transfers are kind of lunch pail guys. They are no nonsense. They comport themselves like they are professionals. I mean, they every rep in every drill, the exact same. There's not a whole lot of frivolity in that group. They know they're competing. 2 of the guys, LJ and Kendrick, this is their last year. They're going to show up now or forever hold their peace. High is 220 pounds. He's built low to the ground, and he gets to full speed in a couple steps. Yeah. He doesn't have a lot of wiggle. He's a pretty good pass receiver out of the backfield, but I wouldn't say he's a great one. But he's a guy that is going to move the pile, and he's going to hit the hole hard. Raphael's a bit more. He's the one guy that's got a little bit of that elusiveness, the really quick feet in the hole. He has the darting running style. He's also a little smaller at 200 pounds, and he can really catch the ball. So as fall camp has progressed, he's gotten more and more time with the ones, I think, because of his versatility. LJ Johnson is a bowling ball. I don't know how to describe him otherwise. He's as wide as he is tall.
Yeah.
He's another guy. He was a former high school sprinter, but really his juice is in that first 20 or 30 yards. He just, he's just electric early. I think his work is, can he pick up the blitz and can he catch the ball out of the backfield? But I think those 3 guys are going to get the lion's share of the carries.
For all of them, I do like new running back coach Julian Griffin said, protecting the passer is protecting your job, because if you can't protect the passer, you can't play it. And so I love that part about him. all three of those guys are going to have to figure out how to protect the passer as well, help with that offensive line. Sorry, go ahead, Jim.
I love the way these guys hit the hole. You know, last year's running was partially a function of the line not being able to open up many holes. So you didn't see a lot of quick developing run plays, but give these guys a crease and they're there immediately. And um, I've always appreciated that style ever since seeing J.J. Arrington hit the hole within a millisecond. And, maybe these guys aren't going to be able to hold their blocks for a long time, and it's a necessity, but they're decisive and they're physical. They can run through contact. They're very similar type backs. And the fact that Wiley is not seeing many reps is telling me that these guys are standing out, because I like Wiley. He's a physical guy that can make plays, and he's finding a hard time seeing the field with them. All three of them provide fantastic depth, I think. Obviously,
Yeah.
explosive
Cal's,
playability is not really on the menu too much this year with them, but steady yards per carry, I think we can see a lot more of that this year.
That's perfectly said. Cal's going to miss the home run threat of the Jet and Ott, but I think this room is actually in much better shape than one would have thought after basically the whole room leaves.
Yeah, early on, everybody thought it was Armageddon because all of a sudden everybody just defected in that running back room. It was like, what is going on? Like, that is not good. But I agree. Having watched them play, if nothing else, I think they will be serviceable within the run game. In terms of hitting the hole fast, a lot more gap scheme, power counter. There's a setup timing to it, and then you hit the hole downhill. We ran a lot more zone before, read zone stuff, with quarterbacks, RPO stuff. In that last offense, it's harder for guys to hit the hole fast in that instance. And so I think the dynamic of the style of offense that the Bears are going to run this year is going to change. You're going to have more two tight end sets. You're going to see more power running game, gap scheme running game. I love teams that can run gap scheme. If you can run gap scheme, you can do a lot up front. So it's going to help. Read that Brendan Hyde was a 10-400 guy in high school. That's pretty fast. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it yet. I haven't seen it in practice. Maybe it happens in games, right?
Yeah.
And so
he was 180
about
pounds.
the breakaway.
Yeah, he was
about the breakaway. I need to see it in the game.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'm always a little bit reluctant to get too excited about those for guys because he was 180 pounds when he ran 10-4. He's now 220.
Right. Yeah, it's a big difference. I saw that in Russell White. He went from being a 4.39 to being a 4.6. Still pretty talented, pretty amazing. But weight changes everything. All right, final position here, and this is a big one because we've had some names and some guys that showed up. As I watch practices, I'm like, okay, that's not as bad as I thought. But that receiver position, the question for me at the receiver position, does FCS production translate to the next level, right? Can we get a guy like Mark Hamper, who almost 1,000 yards at Idaho? Can he turn that into, FBS Power 4 production? Can it happen? Or can these guys with big pedigrees, Keon Graves in particular, a guy who spent most of last year injured, can they now turn their pedigree? We have Graves, we have James, we have Dixon Veal, Purdue, Arkansas, Ohio State. Do they show up? Were they recruited? Is there a reason that they were recruited so highly? Do they have the skills to show up? We're going to play 7 or 8 guys at the spot this year. It just happens every year, just like defensive back. So these guys have to show up. The only guy who has had real production out there for the Bears is Tron Gazelle. And so he's going to show up just like he always does. He's going to be a guy who makes plays. Can he stretch the top? Maybe not. He can go up and get the ball. He's bigger. You can throw him open. But who else is going to step up that position? Jacob DeJesus, one. Mark Hamper, I think, is another guy. They've both shown up. Does it translate? Give me your take.
It's a room that has 7 or 8 guys that I think are good players. Higher floor, maybe, than we had the last couple of years, but it's a big question mark, the ceiling. I think the thing we haven't seen is the dynamic outside playmaking, right? The consistent getting over the top, the ability to go up and win the 50-50 balls. That's a work in progress right now, I think. DeJesus is a ball player. He shows up to practice. does everything exactly the right way, plays 100% all the time. You rarely, if ever, see the ball hit the ground. He's going to be really good in that slot. Tron, as you said, we know. I think, numbers 3 through 8, that's up in the air. See, this is to me a little bit what you said earlier, Mike. Let's see when the lights go on and the bullets are live, who actually shows up. Because James can run, and I'm guessing he's going to have a package. I would say the guy who had the best last week of practice, both what I saw when I was there and also talking to the coaches, was Trevor Rogers. He got a lot more consistent hanging on the ball and made some plays. So they're excited about kind of his trajectory a little bit. You mentioned Hamper. He's a zone killer, and he's also he's going to be great in any kind of tunnel screen or wide receiver screen we want to run because he's got those quick feet and he's a bigger guy.
Yeah.
I
and
think
great ball skills.
Yeah, and good ball skills. That's right. That's right. It's going to be a really interesting room to watch, and hopefully a group that can help our young quarterback out.
Yeah, I need somebody who can stretch the top for me, right? James can run, no doubt about it. Karan Adams can run, but you can't necessarily find him on the field. So you've got some guys that can fly. Jordan King, we didn't talk, Trev Rogers, you talked about some of the guys that are in-house guys that Cal recruited. Jordan King had a chance, right? He's going to have to make it happen. Trevor Rogers can be a big-time playmaker. Trev has always had the tools. He's got the speed. He can move. He can cut. His one weakness is ball skills. When the ball is in the air, is Trevor going to focus down on catching the ball all the way to finish? I've worked with him since he was a sophomore in high school. I know what a good player he can be. And when he does that, he's a really, really good wide receiver. And if he can build it into his game where he can catch all the time, he could be a threat out there because he can definitely stretch the field downhill, right? He's a guy who can run. And so there are guys with the tools to do it. They have to pierce that starting lineup, and then they have to start making plays, Jim.
Yeah, you mentioned Adams real briefly and stretching the field. This is a guy that led the nation in yards per catch, granted at a lower level at South Dakota, but he's impressed when I've seen him out there. We just haven't seen a lot of long balls go his way. That's what I'd really love to see because that seems to be one of his strong suits based on his early playing career. And Jordan King, you mentioned him briefly too. It's impressive the way that he has kind of forced his way into seeing starting reps. He's got the prototype size. He's probably not as fast as you'd like to see on the outside, but he catches everything and he's pretty physical out there too. So
yeah.
He's 215 pounds and he'll block you and he'll box you out. He's going to play.
He looks like a dude for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now he's just got to stay healthy and then be consistent, right? Those are the two things in this position. Stay healthy, be consistent. Availability is absolutely essential. And you and I talked about this on the field, Greg. In terms of Adams, in terms of DeJesus, they're little guys. And, they were both insanely productive for their teams last year. As a quarterback, finding little guys in space is one thing, but then they have to get open. They literally have to be open and find those spots because you can't position throw the ball. If I have Tron, I can throw him a ball high and away, knowing that he can go up and get it. The other guy can't go get it. If I have Jordan King, he's got size, physicality. I can throw him a ball and position throw a ball. With little guys, they have to be open, and sometimes they get lost in there. And it's it's not a knock on them. It is what it is. It's harder for a quarterback to find that guy. Now you use him as a slot, you match him, you work him against zones, you do those kind of things, and you can get a lot of use out of those guys. But getting deep over the top is not always as effective because even when he's got a step, he's still covered with arm span.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
a great point.
As a little guy, you have to get open.
You talked a little bit about the O-line and going from that zone blocking scheme to the gap blocking scheme that we're seeing now. I think you're going to also see Brian Harsin use his slot receivers very differently and take advantage of the explosiveness of Adams and DeJesus in ways maybe we haven't seen in previous offenses to get those guys on the edge and in space more often and not force them to have to run deep corners or deep outs. Because at 5'6" and 5'7", that's just not what they're built to do.
Yeah, catch the ball for him at 7 yards and then go make something happen, right? Use him like a return guy. Hit him with the ball and then let him pick out space and let him find things. I agree with that 100%.
Jet sweeps too, particularly with DeJesus. We're going to see a decent amount of that this year. And then the other guy we didn't talk about is Keon Grays. He's got as much talent as any receiver out there on the field, but he's got to stay healthy. If he doesn't stay healthy, his
Stay
reps are going to
healthy.
be limited.
Yeah, I mean, you have to stay healthy. That was, to me, one of the most disappointing things of last season. You had a couple receivers that were highly touted coming in, and neither one of them stayed healthy. And so you didn't get a lot of production out of him at that position. Grays, I would love to see him step up this year. You know, again, all these guys, I don't say these things to be a dick. I say them because I want to see production out of these guys. I want to see them all flourish at Cal. But I need you to produce if you're going to be here, especially now in the day and age of NIL stuff. If you're earning a paycheck now to play football, you need to earn your paycheck. You need to step up and play it. And that's just my opinion as a guy who did it at both levels. So that covers all that. Anybody want to wrap up with special teams?
Yeah. I'll do it real quick because it's another, I think, Adams and DeJesus are going to make an impact. They're going to be the primary returners, I think, using their explosiveness and speed on the field. And I think that they're going to have a chance to make a difference. Obviously, we all want to talk about the place kicking, given what a disaster it's been the last couple of years. Justin Wilcox said today they're definitively going to have 2 kickers. So, Chase Meyer's going to be the PAT and 40 yards are in. He's been very consistent in camp. We'll have to see what he does when the lights go on, but I feel good about, he doesn't strike the ball very often where it's not hit well and starting right between the uprights. Abram Murray's the long distance. He's got the big leg. He's going to be your kickoff guy, and if you need a 50-yarder, he's the guy you're going to pull out there. They're going to play them both. So, I think camp results last year were not indicative of what we saw during the season, so I'm a little bit reluctant to get too optimistic there. But so far, we like what we've seen. The punter competition's been interesting. Michael Kern punted for Texas last year as a true freshman. He's got a big leg. But Brooke Honor, who came in and punted in the spring, has been really consistent. And I don't know how that battle is going to play itself out. I think that's going to come down to the wire, but both guys can get it done.
Jim, any thoughts on special teams?
Nope, I agree down the line.
Well, so the trick in special teams is it's often overlooked. I hate talking about special teams because there's so much nuance to it. But you have to be good in the kicking game. You have to be great in the coverage game. And we've seen Coach Wilcox will use his starters in coverage to make sure that you're doing the right thing when it comes to special team in terms of trade and field.
Mike, you gotta hope the improved depth and all the competition we've had for starting jobs. I've never seen a year with more open starting is going to lead to better special teams because you got a lot of guys with experience and athleticism that are fighting to get on the field right now.
Yeah, and you have to fight in that special team spot. Like they will tell you, if you want to make the field, make special teams, make it happen. And so that's essential. Any final thoughts to wrap it up?
I think the one thing we didn't have time to touch on too much, but I'll certainly make a note of is the coaching changes. Brian Harsin is a very different offensive coordinator than we've had before. I think the early returns are positive. I've seen less false starts, less bad snaps, less guys not knowing where to go than I can remember in a fall camp. I think that's a good sign. Justin Wilcox, and with Peter Sherman leaving, it's his defense. It's always been his defense to a certain extent, but now it really feels like his defense, and that feels like his natural place to be. So I think there are some positives to take away from the coaching changes that hopefully will play itself out on the field.
And I like Famika Anai as a guy that came in to revamp the offensive line. He's brought a toughness and a different mentality to that group. Firsthand how important it is for those guys to be nasty and to impose their will. And, we saw a little bit of that in 2 years ago before we had the split offensive coordinator, offensive line duties. But he just brings a different edge, I think, than I've seen in quite a while there. The question is, can you get these guys playing as a unit and really fully buying into his style of play? I think he can really have a huge impact on this squad this year.
No doubt about it. Yeah, the only returning coach on offense is Mike Safell. So that tells you something on that side of the ball, right? They made wholesale change, and it's been the gap. And so we will see how it turns out. Looking forward to this season. Hopefully, our optimism is founded. That'd be great. Every year we go into the Bears and we hope for the best. And so we're hoping for the best this year. That's just a preview of what you're going to see. Gentlemen, I appreciate you guys coming on here. I
Thanks,
always
Mike.
love talking Cal football with you. It's always great to have you. And then everybody at home, kickoff versus Oregon State coming up. It's just over a week and a half away. So you don't want to miss it. We'll be on the road. You can catch it on TV. You can catch our call on the radio as well, me and Justin Allegri. We'll also be doing a show from Fan Day coming up this Saturday in Memorial Stadium. So you can catch that on KNBR from the broadcast from the booth. Anyway, for everybody, for Bear Insider, Ultimate Insider, I'm Mike Pawlawski. For Greg, for Jim, we'll talk to you guys soon. Go Bears.